All right, Kings fans, welcome back to the Frozen Crown. And with week one in the books, that means we've got some actual games to cover and take a look at the upcoming week on a pivotal road trip for our boys coming into week two. So without further ado, we'll get started with week one's review. And we'll start by talking about what happened against the Vegas Golden Knights on opening night. Only two games in the NHL, this one being the later of the two. Velarde started us off right off the rip with a really nice goal fed by Byfield, which was nice to see. And they actually had Kopitar mic'd up for this game, and he turned to somebody, maybe an athletic trainer, maybe another player on the bench. He turned to them, and he's like, after Velarde scored, he turned to this guy on the bench, and he's like, "He's hot, he's hot." And I thought it was kind of funny. I think that Kopitar should know better than this. I don't know. Maybe he's just had a discussion with that person before about him being hot, but Velarde's not just hot. Okay, he is this good. He will be a fixture in our top six on the power play and things here for many years to come, and he's ready. He's ready right now. So hopefully Kopitar recognizes this, as I think Tom McClellan is recognizing this. But he got things started off early, and certainly throughout week one has been a very impressive start for Velarde, as yours truly predicted. Next, penalty kill still struggles. I think one thing that they are seeing is a lot of open points, maybe just an extra half second for that talented offensive defenseman to take a slap shot and find its way through and not get blocked, or an extra half second for that guy to take a look up, as with the Pietrangelo to Carlson goal. Take a look up, find an open stick for a tip in, and get it to him. That's one thing I see is definitely the points being open a little too much time for that guy at the point. And maybe we're just getting sucked down too low in towards our net, and then that opens up high too much. One thing I also saw against the Golden Knights was very aggressive defensemen pushing up into the rush. I think I saw like Matt Roy right up on the crease a couple times. Dursey got aggressive. He brought it up one time, really had a nice rush. Other than his one big mistake, which I'll talk about next, I actually thought Dursey had a good game. And in general, I think D were joining the rush a lot and causing some odd man rushes back the other way. Quick was hung out to dry on a couple of them. But really, I think we'll be a little more aggressive this year. I don't think the Kings needs to be that aggressive on our defense this year. But two costly mistakes by our young defensemen. Another thing we talked about in the preview kind of hurt us here. So the big one, which is very, very poor, was Mikey Anderson's change. He came across the ice and just the Golden Knights were rushing against us, coming down 3-on-2, and Mikey Anderson decided to change and turned it into a 3-on-1. Really poor mistake there. Definitely would like to see more out of our top pairing defensemen as far as awareness of the game in that sense. And then obviously the big one that I think a lot of Kings fans will be upset about, especially I think it's more magnified because of the fact that Dursey was sitting behind the net for about like 30 seconds, just keeping his head up. Maybe it looked like, okay, yeah, we're just going to wait till overtime for this. And then when he did decide to make a play, it got intercepted. He gave it away. Mark Stone came down, finished on a nice shot, and really cost us at least a point, if not 2 points that game, from a kind of a boneheaded play from Dursey. But other than that, I thought that Dursey did have a good game. Not an incredible, performance by the team, but certainly one that wouldn't be like a huge problem for me. That is reserved for the game against Seattle. So the next one with our game against Seattle here, bottom line, I think the Kings just got outworked, especially getting outworked by a team that just played last night and doing a back-to-back situation on the road. The Kings should have had more of a jump and should have been able to take advantage of the fact that Seattle was pretty tired. Seattle's got one of the best structures I've seen in an NHL team in a little while, especially considering they're this early in the year. I think their coaching staff did a good job of that. But the Kings, they had very poor structure. Position-wise, people were kind of out of position a lot. People were maybe just trying to do too much, and that's where structure allows people to know what their role is and stay in that role. And people were kind of just starting to panic and get a little too flustered and trying to do too much. So Definitely a humbling game where the Kings realize, hey, we're probably a more talented team than Seattle, but the talent won't make up for hard work and won't make up for structure. So I think it's taught them a lesson to take every game seriously, and definitely was a bit of an eye opener for a lot of us Kings fans, as we probably chalk this up as a W against Seattle. But Seattle's an improved team, and I think the Pacific Division will be an improved division in general. We did see Todd McClellan do a little bit of a blender of the lines here with the third period. I think almost every line got touched, at least with one player mixing it up here. And I don't blame him for that. I think we really were struggling to get anything. And, if you got to try something, try it. But yeah, I do think we learned a valuable lesson early, which I'm glad we kind of got that lesson out of the way, especially against a team that probably won't be in the playoffs and probably won't be costly points to give up that early in the season. So I think it's a good timing of learning that lesson. Now we're 0-2 going into game number 3 to finish up the week, and starting off 0-2 at home is a very poor start. We absolutely needed a good win against Minnesota for game 3, and we did edge out a win. We won 7-6 against Minnesota, so a bit of a high-flying, high-scoring game. But in general, I think still some good things to build on and things to learn from as well. The biggest thing to build on here is that the big guys got it done against the Wild. Kevin Fiala had a good game. Kopitar, Kempe got involved. Velarde got involved, and even Iafallo had some points too. So it's good to see that, your top guys are being your top guys. I was also happy to see that McClellan showed faith in Peterson. Marc-Andre Fleury got pulled in, I think, between the first and second periods. He got pulled, and I was looking for McClellan to pull Peterson, though I really don't think he ever gave up a really bad goal. Fleury gave up a bad goal that I could say probably led to his pulling, but I don't think Peterson played a horrible game. I would have liked to seen him maybe stop a few other shots to keep us in the lead, but really, him showing faith in Peterson is good to see. I think that he's ready to commit to this 2-goalie system, especially with quick aging. We need Peterson to be good, and we can't be pulling him his very first start of the season. So I was glad to see that. We have to realize that winning games 7-6 is not a sustainable win strategy. So, it's good to see scoring. It's probably one of the highest scoring games you'll see all year from the Kings. But we don't want to be winning games 7-6 or 6-5 or something like that. Even though we'll probably be a little more offensive talented team, we need to keep the puck out of our net, especially when it comes time for playoffs. You can ask the Toronto Maple Leafs what it's like to have a high-scoring team that can't win in the playoffs because their defense isn't that great. The last part here versus Minnesota, 2 games in, second line struggling. I wasn't really too worried about it, especially because Arvidsson didn't play against Seattle. But is it time to press the panic button for the second line already? That second line of Moore, Deneau, and Arvidsson. I don't know quite yet. We'll definitely know more by the end of this second week. But Deneau and Moore and Arvidsson have all struggled to really find many good scoring chances. And, certainly we need that production like they had last year to continue so that we can get secondary scoring, because Fiala with Kopitar and Kempe can't do it every night. So if we don't see more production out of that line soon, I do see McClellan switching it up. Even though it was so great last year, we can't sit around and wait for them to get good this year. The points are just too valuable this early. So I could see Velarde getting in there. Even, I think, last game against Minnesota, he kind of got in there with Arvidsson and Deneau. So I could see that happening. So out of those 3 games, we finished 1-2. I'm going to do some summaries of just kind of overall thoughts of the team, and then we'll go into some individual players that I thought had good and bad weeks. So for the summary, I'll say that we were in a struggling. We struggled this whole week. I think even in Minnesota's game, even though we won it, you could say that we struggled. But this is not surprising to me because of how much line movement and roster changes we had. Not necessarily roster changes, but just depth chart line changes. So I think we only had the Dano, Moore, and Arvidsson line together for 2 games, and that was the only line that was really a thing last year. So we've got new deep pairings trying to play together, new forwards trying to get used to playing with each other, and this is all in real games that matter, not preseason games. So this chemistry is going to take time. I'm not surprised to see them struggle out of the gate, and I'm not too worried. I still think there's enough talent on this team to get the job done. One thing I've always loved about Todd McClellan was his choices as far as lineups. So after game one, Dursey made that bad play, coughed it up, and cost them at least a point, like I said, and he was out for game two. I did think he played a good game before that bonehead move, but to send a message to Dursey right away, I think McClellan made the right move there, especially trying to get Brant Clark into some game action. Then he also made a good choice with Grundstrom. He gave Grundstrom a shot on the second line with Arvidsson out due to illness, and he didn't perform well, and he benched him in the third game. Grundstrom is a guy that we need to see more out of. He gave him a shot, which I talked about in the season preview. I think we could see him move around. He's got some talent there. He's not just a fourth line grinder, but he did not step up, and then he got benched in the Minnesota game. So I was happy to see that, and I was also happy to see Velarde start to get more and more ice time. I think Velarde proved himself. If not in the preseason, he definitely proved himself now. He's ready to get more minutes. He's ready to be a big-time performer for the Kings offensively. So he got a lot more minutes. As each game went on, he got more and more minutes. And he's seeing top-line power play deployment as well. I think that the Kings were humbled early, and we saw this last season as well. Last season in October, though, that was their worst month. And then everything just got better from there for the Kings. But we need to step it up and get more performance out of our defense. And I think that the defense kind of got humbled with these first 3 games, letting in like 14 goals. That'll humble you, and that'll make you realize, hey, we got to buckle down here. So this next road trip coming up is absolutely pivotal for the whole season. I think there's a lot of time on the road for the guys. They're just in the hotels, and there's no family distractions. They can be in the weight room, on the practice ice, just around each other together, really just bonding. And a lot of these guys need to get that chemistry together, need to kind of form their lines, and this is pivotal for that. Road trips, I think they always talk about these road trips being big for that, and this one couldn't come at a better time, really. They're already struggling. They need that chemistry. The road trip came at a great time for them. Next, I'm going to look at key performers. I think we have to start out by talking about Gabe Vilardi, as he, so far, I think, is the best King on the team right now. He's the best player on the team right now. Not necessarily from a points perspective, but he also really gives a lot of effort out there. I'm happy to see his forecheck. I'm happy to see his buy-in and his effort level. He scraps it up a little bit, but he's not like taking bad penalties and things. So from a effort level standpoint and from a production standpoint, there's even been a couple plays where he could have gotten some assists. One where he hit Kempe on the power play right in the slot comes to mind. But he's already leading the team in points. He's leading the team in plus minus. What more could you ask out of a guy for a start? So certainly being on the third line, not even being exposed to some of the top performers on the team on 5v5 play, that's certainly he has to go to number 1 for key performers for me. Next is Kempe. I think that Kempe showed consistency through the first, second, and third game. The first line really picked it up come the Minnesota game, but Kempe was definitely a force throughout all 3 games, and he's back to the scoring form that we saw last season, which was kind of a question mark for us. It was a career year for him, and he picked up right where he left off, and we really needed him to prove that he could be another goal scorer again this year, and so far he's doing great on pace for that. Next, Iafallo. I think a guy who really had a down year last year, really starting off hot this year, was good to see. His wraparound goal against Seattle kind of kept us in it morale-wise, as we were kind of losing that game otherwise. And I think that Iafallo being on that third line was really tasked by Todd McClellan to have more of an impact, and he stepped up to the plate. Even though he's not exposed to the best players on the team, especially not even being on the first line power play, to be tied for the first in points right now is really good to see out of him. Next, we're going to look at the doghouse. So, for those of you unaware, the doghouse is the term for someone who the coach does not have in their good graces, who does not think the coach doesn't think very highly of them. I think that Daryl Sutter was the one who really coined this term for me. I think he would put players in the doghouse if they made a mistake or they weren't playing well. He would let them know it, and he would bench them. He had no problem benching them for a while. So that's where I started using the term doghouse. I will probably make this a segment every week, talking about players that are in my doghouse, and maybe players who I think are in McClellan's doghouse but aren't necessarily in mine. But to start off with the doghouse, I think we have to start with Victor Arvidsson. He is one of the most talented forwards on the team. He's a big piece of that second line. And through 2 games, he only played 2, but he was a -2 and only had 4 shots. And the shots that he's taking are bad angles and aren't really the most high danger scoring chance shots. So he needs to be able to penetrate more, get more to the slot area, and find more chemistry that made him such a threat with Danault and Moore. So we'll see how he does with that. It's probably going to be either him or Moore that would get swapped out for Velarde if they don't continue to if they continue down this path and they don't improve. But I would like to see Arvidsson turn it around come week 2 because we need his scoring. Next is Mikey Anderson. Particularly in the first and second games, I thought Anderson had a really rough time of it for both of those games. Minnesota, he looked a lot better, but with Vegas, I think we already talked about that bad line change that led to a goal. And then he ended up kind of scoring on quick in the Seattle game. In the Seattle game, his goal against the goal that he got scored on, the goal that he scored, really is a result of him not having body positioning on the player and having to use his stick instead of his body to make a play. And when he had to use a stick that and close in tight to the net, there's a chance you'll ramp it up off of the other guy's stick and shoot and score in your own net. So he kind of struggles to find his physical side and use that to move other guys around, I think. And I'll show a clip of that here later. But I think that he's still learning a lot and being put on the first line. I don't know that he's ready for first line deployment with Doughty. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing other players in there. I just think that he's kind of struggling right now, and especially with that line change in the first game. That's why he's in the doghouse for me. The next guy, who I actually had a lot more expectations for, and I think we can classify as probably the second best defenseman on the team, is Matt Roy. The biggest thing for me with Matt Roy is 5 giveaways in the first 2 games, 5 giveaways total. But in the first 2 games, he had 5 giveaways, and he really didn't seem to be the steady stay-at-home defenseman that we need him to be. I think that he struggled to find his kind of relationship with his D partner, and that maybe threw him off a little bit. But he needs to be a bigger part of the team that, the deep pair that stops pucks from going into our net. And I think we saw a lot better again in the Minnesota game. He looked better, but we have to see more out of him. He is probably the second best defenseman on this roster. Next, we're going to look at a preview for week number 2. And with this preview, I think this is across all these teams, they're all good but not great teams. Detroit's probably the worst of them, but they got a lot better this offseason. But it's a good test, but nothing too crazy. You're not going to have your Colorados or your Calgarys in this road trip. A couple teams out east. And so I think that this is a very good opportunity to come out of this with a winning record. They already started the road trip with a win. If they can win half of these games here, just 2 of them, then the road trip was a victory, 3-2. We can say that was a success. But like I said, I just kind of want to see chemistry building up here. I kind of want to see, I want to see between the 17th and 18th, we'll see one of each goalie on back-to-back. I have no reason to believe that McClellan will go with 2 goalies, the same goalie at 2 games in a row. So we'll probably get a chance to see both goalies, which will be good. Get to see how they're doing. We'll get to see probably some lineup changes here too, with guys maybe like Anderson Dolan coming in on a back-to-back, or Brant Clark coming in on a back-to-back, or maybe get to see Sean Walker again. So opportunities for guys to get ice time. opportunities for line mates to kind of gel. And definitely, if we can come out of this road trip with a winning record, it'll be a big morale boost and a really big, good kind of a jump pad to start the season with her off on the right foot after kind of a struggle in the beginning. So I'd be happy to hear what you guys think about the review of our first 3 games, and interested to see how the Kings do in this big, huge already. The games are already starting to get to be like must wins. I know the game against Minnesota probably was. So already a huge road trip coming up. Looking forward to watching it starting right away tomorrow on Monday. So please follow along with me as we watch the Kings all season, and I'll be here week after week to give reviews of all the action that we saw with our boys. So please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week to review week 2. Thank you.